All right, all right, all right. Welcome to the WMMA scene report episode. I think this is 28. Let me check real quick here. Yep, 28. So we're going to go do the same thing we do every week. We're going to go over the news, or we're going to go over the past weekend's results. Then we're going to go over the news. Then we'll go over the upcoming weekends of fights, which is not a whole lot of fights, but it's spread out across the entire weekend. And then finally, I came up with something interesting to discuss. Hopefully, we'll get some more audience in there by then to discuss it. But it's going to be what can MMA learn from boxing? So I think it'll be an interesting discussion. If I don't get a whole lot of people, I might just make it into a separate video anyway. So let's get down to it. Let me bring up the fight results here. The screen's going to go bright. All right, first up was One Warrior Series, number 6, 2 ladies fights. First up at 115 pounds, Satomi Takano defeated Michelle Ferreira via submission due to armbar. It was 2 minutes, 56 seconds of round 2. Takano improved to 13-11. Ferreira fell to 3-1. This is a good fight. It was action-packed. Ferreira did well on the feet, but it was obvious that Takano's vast experience helped her a lot on the ground, and she really did not waste too much time trying to stand with Ferreira in either round. Got her down, got the armbar in the second round. Next up was also at 115 pounds, Ji-Yeon Seo defeated Edila Joanny via TKO due to punches at 3 minutes, 48 seconds of round 3. Seo climbed to 7-4. Johanny fell to 2-3. This was a very good fight. I thought it was pretty action-packed as well. Seo doing very good work on the ground. Showed a lot of improvement over her last fight. And then in the third round, no one wasted any time trying to get it to the ground. Or Johanny did, I think, try in the third. But Seo was just keeping her at the edge of her jab very well. Towards the end of the third minute, Johanny threw a body kick to Seo. Seo caught it and then landed a big right hand straight to the face of Johanny that had Johanny covering up and saved by the referee. So these ladies, some of these ladies did get rewards. I'll get to that later on in the news. Next event up was Combate 40. There was only one ladies fight. Desiree Yanez defeated Paulina Vargas due to technical submission. They're calling it technical submission due to injury. Okay. I thought Vargas won the first round of this fight handily, pretty well. On the feet, had Yanez rocked several times. Second round, Yanez got the fight to the ground and controlled Vargas from there. Third round, Yanez got Vargas to the ground, and I guess at that point, Vargas must have landed wrong because she broke her ankle or dislocated it or something. You can go look at the pictures. It's on Combate's Twitter. I actually shared it on my Twitter. You can look it up at now WMMA. It was gross looking. Vargas was mounted with eating strikes, and she suddenly tapped out. Didn't see the injury until afterwards. So I guess they're calling it technical submission due to injury. At the time, it looked like she was tapping out due to strikes from getting mounted and eating punches. But it was just weird. Like it made a lot more sense when they showed the replay and showed that she was flapping her ankle. It was gross looking. Hopefully, wish Vargas a full recovery. Anyway, Yanez climbed to 5-1. Vargas fell to 4-1. Lost her undefeated record there. No big deal, though. It was just a gross injury. Saturday, I think there's like 5 women's fights total. 2 in Bellator, which I haven't gotten a chance to watch either of these fights yet. But first up at 125 pounds flyweight, Kate Jackson defeated Lena Ovchennikova due to take or via TKO due to cut from mounted elbows at 4 minutes 15 seconds of round number 1. Jackson climbed to 11-3. Ovchinnikova fell to 12-6. From what I understand, that it was basically a blowout. And then Ovchinnikova received a cut from elbows, and the doctor stopped the fight. And then also at flyweight, Denise Kielholtz defeated Bryony Terrell via TKO due to ground pound, 2 minutes 38 seconds of round 3. Kielholtz climbed to 3-2. Terrell fell to 4-4. I don't know anything about this fight, unfortunately. I'll have to watch it later. Anybody watching? No. Okay. Next up, UFC on ESPN Plus number 12. Moicano versus Korean Zombie, a.k.a. UFC Fight Night Greenville, which is, I don't even refer to them by the numbers anymore. I just call it by the towns now, unless it's a pay-per-view. First up, Molly McCann defeated Ariana Lipski by unanimous decision. McCann climbed to 9-2. Lipski fell to 11-5. McCann looked good, but Lipski simultaneously looked like hot garbage. She looked like she was moving through. She looked like she was fighting underwater, honestly. She was moving that slow. Obviously, my opinion is that Lipski has been a bust in the UFC, 0-2 now, and she made Molly McCann look good. Now, McCann obviously did show some improvement, but you have to wonder how much of that was her looking good and how much was Lipski looking bad. I don't know. It's up to you. I'll leave it up to you. Next up at 115 pounds, Ashley Yoder defeated Sherry Kondo by unanimous decision. This was utter domination on the ground. Yoder wasted no time standing with Kondo, took her down and controlled her. I think she got like 2 or maybe all 3 or 30-26 scores. Utter domination. Yoder climbed to 7-4. Kondo fell to 6-3. I believe that is 3 straight losses now for Kondo in the UFC, so she is probably gone now, unfortunately for her. And then finally, at 125 pounds flyweight, Andrea Lee defeated Montana De La Rosa via unanimous decision. Lee climbed to 11-2. De La Rosa fell to 10-5. Andrea Lee finally started to show some real promise in her. She started to show an ability to really put it together, and she showed that, she's not. To me, I thought she showed that, she's not just going to give up when it gets tough. She almost pulled a KGB Lee in the 3rd round, but was able to pull out of it. So she didn't go full potato. So good on her. She's still a Nazi lover. Finally, oh, no, that was it for last weekend. All right, so that was it for the results. So we're on to the news. First up, Hong Kong bantamweight Ramona Pasquale has accepted a scholarship to the UFC's Shanghai Performance Institute after a 2-day trial with the UFC Academy Combine. So the UFC is doing this academy thing over there at the new Performance Institute in Shanghai. There was like 30 fighters accepted, and I think 5 or 6 of them were women. Pasquale was the only one that I could recognize from the pictures I saw. So good luck to her. I believe she's there for like the next 6 months now, trying to get accepted to the UFC. Next up, at 135 pounds, Roxanne Modafferi will face Jennifer Maia in a rematch at UFC on ESPN4 in San Antonio, July 20th. Her Modafferi's original opponent, Liz Carmouche, was moved down to the Uruguay card to headline in a title challenge against Valentina Shevchenko. Modafferi had previously challenged Maia for the Invicta flyweight title a few years ago in Invicta, where she lost a split decision to Maia. So this is a rematch in the UFC now. So Paige Van Zandt has announced that she is considering both a return to strawweight and testing free agency. So she's currently out due to her 3rd straight arm surgery. She keeps breaking it. But now she's talking about possibly returning to strawweight and said that after I believe this is the last fight on her contract, and that she's going to test the free agency waters. I don't blame her personally. I think she's about climbed as far as she's going to get in the UFC. Whereas if she were to go to a different promotion, I think she could do well in Bellator. I think she could do well in one championship. Ryzen would probably figure out something to do with her, possibly, maybe, I don't know. But I don't blame her for testing the free agency waters because, like I said, I think she's gone about as far as she's going to get in the UFC. So she should see if she can make money elsewhere. I think a lot of fighters are going to a lot more fighters are going to be doing that now because I think a lot of fighters are starting to see that the UFC isn't the best fit for everyone anymore. And there are promotions out there that are doing better. They're paying fighters well. So might as well see what you can get. The only risk, though, is that the UFC might go ahead say, yeah, go ahead and test it. And then if they might withhold on what their offer is until after they get an offer from whatever and say, well, go ahead with them because we're going to only offer you what the market says. And if the other promotions say, well, we can only pay you this much, UFC might go, well, that's what you're worth. So now. So it is risky, especially for fighters that are coming off a loss or a little bit of a losing streak that the UFC might otherwise have taken. So there's pluses and minuses to it. Next up, bantamweight Carolyn Rosa, 11-3, has signed to the UFC and is expected to debut at Shenzhen Fight Night in August. That's in China. And apparently she is a teammate of Jessica Andrade at Piranha Valley Tudo. Be interesting to see what she brings to the UFC, especially the dwindling bantamweight division currently. At super atomweight, 108 pounds, Ryzen Fighting Federation has announced that Road FC champion Sahi Ham will face current Deep Jewels champion Tomo Maesawa at Ryzen 17, and that goes down in July 28th at St. Thomas Super Arena. Now, some of the websites that have reported it have said that are reporting Maesawa as the former Deep Jewels champ, but she didn't actually lose her belt. She fought Kana Asakura back in March or April, but that was in a super atomweight bout where she's the atomweight champ. It's a 3-pound difference between the classes, so she's technically still the Deep Jewels atomweight champ. As far as I know, she hasn't lost the title, and I don't think she's vacated it. So anyone that says that she's the former, they're mistaken. Up at 115 pounds, Korean promotion Zeus FC will crown its first champion July 7th when Yedam Sa, 4-2, and Kyolin Kim, 1-0, will compete for the strawweight title in the main event of Zeus FC 2 at the Cheonju Indoor Gymnasium in Cheonju, South Korea. I've seen Yedam Sa fight a couple of times. She's not a bad fighter. I haven't seen this Kyolin Kim fight, so I can't comment on how good or bad she is. It's 4-2 versus 1-0. Kind of seems silly to crown your first champion based on this fight, but hey, good for them. And you know what? Good for the Korean MMA scene having another promotion out there. Next up, Melissa Gatto is out of her fight against Julia Avila at bantamweight at UFC 239. Taking her place will be former Ultimate Fighter finalist Pani Kianzad, who was the finalist on the most recent season at 145 pounds, although she's fought her entire career at 135. So that sucks for Melissa Gatto. I think this is like the second time she's had to bow out of a fight due to injury. I don't think she's even made her debut yet. But it's good for Pani Kianzad to get back to the UFC. She did have to take a fight elsewhere after the Ultimate Fighter for some reason. Even though she was a finalist, she lost in the finals, but they didn't take her for whatever reason. So good on Pani Kianzad, and good for Julia Avila, who doesn't have her debut fight canceled. In other UFC news, at 125 pounds, Antonina Shevchenko versus Lucia Pudilova has been set for a an Ultimate Fight Night in Newark, New Jersey, August 3rd. So flyweight battle going down in the free city of Newark, August 3rd. If you've ever watched Johnny Mnemonic, you'll get that reference. Let's see. Last real news. Three of the four ladies who fought at Warrior Series 6 that was on Thursday took home performance bonuses. So Jiyeon Sa got a bonus for her third round TKO Edila Johanny, and then Satomi Takano and Michelle Ferreira both took home bonuses for their nonstop action fight. So congratulations to those three ladies. Well-deserved bonuses. None of them got signed to the big show yet at one, but that still could be in their future. Now, this next one is a rumor. It has not been confirmed by the UFC or the fighter, but it's been making its rounds on a lot of Brazilian social media. Some of them are pretty reputable. But one championship fighter, Estela Nunes, has been signed to the UFC. Now, keep in mind, this is a rumor only. I think her record is currently 6-1. She's a striking heavy fighter, Muay Thai base. Her only loss, I believe, comes to Angela Lee in a title fight there. And then finally, saw this thanks to Bellator's Twitter, but happy birthday to Bellator's flyweight fighter, Bruna Ellen. Happy birthday, Bruna Ellen. She's next in action July 12th at Bellator 223 in Thackerville, Oklahoma. Okay, so that was it for the news. We're keeping this show light and fast because there's not a whole lot to talk about. Next up is the little section I like to call Welcome to the Scene, where I recognize some of the latest subscribers. Newest one is going to be Aguilucho Doce, or Doce, D-O-C-E, subscribed 3 days ago. So, Aguilucho, welcome to the scene. And then, so finally, let's talk about boxing and what MMA can learn from it. You know, this is something I've been thinking about for quite a while, actually. And I'm not done coming up with different things, but I want to talk about it now, just to have something to, you know, have a discussion topic for this stream. But what can MMA learn from boxing? So far, I have 4 points. Most of them have nothing to do with actual training and more to do with what can MMA promoters and managers learn from boxing. So first thing I thought of immediately, especially watching the last couple weeks and watching how MMA prospects just get obliterated early in their careers. First thing I thought of was how to bring up prospects. Boxing's way better at grooming prospects, okay? So MMA can, one thing they do is incremental challenges, okay? Your first several to a dozen fights in boxing, you're fighting fighters that are completely on a beginner's fighter's own level, okay? Your first fight, you're not fighting someone with more experience. You're fighting another 0-0 fighter, maybe a 1-1 or an 0-1 fighter. Okay, you're not fighting someone who's 6-0, 7-0, or someone that has way more experience and knows what they're doing in the ring. In boxing, 99% of the time, your first fight, your first several fights, you're fighting complete nobodies, just like you are. And there is no rush in boxing to promote these fighters. Like I said, it's not until like your 10th fight in boxing that you get a real step up. Now, granted, you can't wait that many fights because boxers often take a lot more fights early in their career than MMA fighters do. They take them in a lot shorter time. Of course, you train so much more in MMA than boxing that you can't always take fights one after the other after the other. Very few fighters are the exception to that. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule in boxing, but they are few and far between. The biggest ones I can think of are Vasyl Lomachenko, who was a 2-time gold medalist and had like 300-some, 400-some amateur fights before turning pro. He fought for a championship his second fight, and he lost it, but now he's like a champion in 2 or 3 weight classes. Again, he's an exception to the rule. Another one would be Claressa Shields. Again, she was an Olympic champ, but she's in like women's boxing. The shallowness of depth there, the lack of depth in women's boxing makes the women's MMA look like it's like going from a swimming pool to Lake Erie. The difference in depth is that huge. But Claressa Shields is a damn good boxer, but okay, so still Claressa Shields is a damn good boxer. However, if her division were any deeper, she would not be an undisputed champ in less than 12 fights. So anyway, the point was that boxing knows how to bring up its prospects along with incremental challenges. You know, you fight a few fighters on your level, then you take a step up. Fight a few on your level, then you take a step up. Okay, it's not Aaron Pico level Bellator fighting someone that is way above their level and then get knocked out 3 times in your first 7 fights. MMA just does not. I mean, granted, MMA doesn't always do that either. Some fighters do get a good prospect treatment. Right now, Macy Barber is getting the true prospect treatment. Sage Northcutt, they tried to do it with him, and he just, every time they gave him like that incremental step up, he just floundered. But so there are some cases of MMA bringing up prospects right, but there are also some bad ones. And I would say boxing does it way more than MMA does anyway. Next up, the topic of warm-up or comeback fights. Boxing, most of the time you lose a fight, you get another couple, take another couple warm-up fights or comeback fights. You don't get right back in there with another killer. MMA really screws up with this, okay? For example, Darren Till got TKO'd by Tyron Woodley. Who did they give him next? Jorge Rivera, who is a knockout artist and straight up knocked him out, destroyed him. In the women's side, Ronda Rousey got knocked out in devastating fashion by Holly Holm. She sat out for a year, And who did they give her? Amanda freaking Nunes. That was the biggest mistake that the UFC could have done with her. They just, well, one, I think they underestimated Nunes. But 2, you don't put someone coming off a knockout in right away against someone with that knockout power. You're setting your fighter up for failure. So that was a big mistake there. I mean, boxing, and I know a lot of MMA fighters will say, well, we want to see the best fight the best and nothing but the best. Yeah, okay. But if all you line up is people is against killers time after time, you're going to shorten that fighter's career lifespan. And now some fans, they don't give a crap. They're not real fans to me. They're just fans of random violence. Go watch random violence on YouTube because that's stupid. You're not really a fight fan, because if you don't support the fighters, then you can't really call yourself a fight fan, in my opinion. If you just want to see somebody go out there and get knocked out again and again, you're not really a fight fan, because you're not really looking for good fights. You're just looking for knockouts. So in my opinion, MMA can really learn about give a fighter a warm-up fight or a comeback fight after a bad loss. Next up, and this is more on the training aspect. In boxing, fight camps are built around a single fighter. Okay, when a fighter is getting prepared, when a boxer is getting prepared for a fight, their whole fight camp revolves around them and only them. Now, in MMA, you have these big, huge fight gyms and fight teams where they've got all these different fighters. And outside of the fight camp, that is great, because you are learning a lot by sparring with and training with these other fighters. But when you're fighting at a high level, your fight camp should revolve around you and only you, really. Like, you don't need to be taking a break from your own training to go spar with someone else that is preparing for a fight, because that person's preparing for their own fight, which might not coincide with your fight. And let's say you go to help another fighter out and you go for sparring with them and then they knock you out. You could be screwed out of your own fight. So I think there's ups and downs with this fight thought personally, but what I like is that you have your whole fight team and camp focused on you and only you, and it keeps the coaches and the team from dividing their focus, and it keeps the fighters from dividing their focus, because if they're not worried about their other teammates or other fighters in the gym, then they can focus on themselves. And honestly, when you are in fight camp, you need to be focused on yourself, your own fight camp. That's all you need to focus on, not worrying about, oh, well, my teammate's fighting, I need to help her too. I get it, believe me, because as a wrestler, you're always training with as a team. But at a certain point, you got to realize that your career has to take precedent over anybody else's career. So I think that's something MMA can learn from boxing. And I realize that with these big, huge fight camps, it's hard, but I still think that's important. And then finally, and this goes back to the promotion. But in boxing, the fighters, not the promotion, not the brand, but the fighters are the stars. Biggest problem is how this drives fan perception. Because in MMA, the casual MMA fans view the UFC as being synonymous with MMA. You even got dum-dums out there saying, I train UFC. No, you train mixed martial arts. But that's how they view it. Because they don't know that there's mixed martial arts beyond the UFC. Because the UFC is synonymous with it. Whereas, on the other hand, boxing fans follow specific fighters, okay? Now, you do have some dum-dums that will fight, that will support a certain promotion. Like, you have PBC fanboys. But for the most part, boxing fans follow certain boxers. And they are loyal to those boxers. They don't care that it's Top Rank on ESPN. They don't care that it's Matchroom Boxing on Sky Sports or DAZN. They don't care that it's PBC on Fox. They don't care that it's PBC on Showtime. They're there to watch the specific boxers because the boxers are the stars. But in the MMA, or at least especially the UFC, the brand is the star. The promotion's the star. One sec, guys. Okay. Get rid of that flashing coming in. Anyway, this mentality has allowed MMA promoters to treat many good fighters as expendable. Mostly the UFC does this because they say, oh, that goes back to the free agency thing I mentioned earlier in the news. Oh, you want to go see just free agency? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, they offered you that? Oh, yeah, go ahead. If they're going to offer you that, go ahead and stick with them. They've lost some good fighters that way. And honestly, the UFC just treats its fighters like crap. They treat them like expendable because, honestly, the fighters and the fans themselves have allowed the UFC to treat fighters as if they're expendable. When really the fighters should be the stars. Now, should every fighter in the UFC be a star? No. But it shouldn't always be about the UFC. It shouldn't be about Dana White. Okay? Dana White Contender Series should be called UFC Contenders or Future Contenders. It shouldn't be Dana White. Or on The Ultimate Fighter, when they're doing their stupid intro and always says starring Dana White and Dana White at the end of the credits. No one should be caring about Dana freaking White. He shouldn't be in the credits, okay? He's not a star of the show. The star of the show is the fighters, not the promoters. No one cares about that fat, bald, red goof. I should just call him Fat Red Goof. Now I'm insulting bald people. Anyway, the point was the fighters are the stars in boxing, whereas in MMA, especially in the UFC, it seems like the promotion is the star and the fighters are just there to promote the fight promotion itself. Now, not everyone does this, okay? Pride made big stars out of the fighters. Granted, you had to watch Pride to see them, but they promoted the fighters as big stars. They treated the fighters like stars. Ryzen is trying to do it. They're not as big as Pride that was. Bellator tries to treat the fighters as the big stars that they are. You know, they're the star of the show. UFC just doesn't do it as much because they want to promote the UFC over the fighters. To them, it's the UFC is. They want people to tune in to watch the UFC. They don't want people to tune in to watch certain fighters. Now, granted, they'll give certain fighters concessions, but they're few and far between. There are the fighters that have kind of grown up beyond the UFC. Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, John Jones to a slightly lesser extent, George St. Pierre. But even George St. Pierre, they've been at odds with him a bunch because they know that he's bigger than the UFC, but they don't want that. They don't want to have to deal with a fighter that they know will walk away from them, willingly and readily, because they know George St. Pierre is like, well, okay, you don't want to give me what I want. I don't care. I'll stay retired. They don't want to deal with that. Anyway, guys, that's really all I can think of for that. So, we made it to a half hour. All right. That's usually my goal. So that's really all I have for tonight. I am going to keep working on these points laid out in this discussion. We'll keep going with that. Oh, fights this weekend. Did not get to those. So, Saturday, UFC Minneapolis. I did make picks on all of these too. Only ladies fight is at 150 pounds. Emily Whitmire, 4-2 versus Amanda Ribas, 6-1. I believe this is Ribas's debut. I'm picking Whitmire, mostly based on familiarity and looking at who Amanda Ribas has fought, which was nobody. She doesn't have any really. Her best win, from what I saw, was against Eleni Saddlemeyer, who was 9-6 at the time. That was Ribas's fourth fight, but she also has a loss to Polyana Vienna as well. So I'm going to go with Emily Whitmire is my pick. Also, Saturday, Deep 90th Impact. This is super early in the AM, though. I believe you can watch this on YouTube. I'm not sure what. Yeah, I think they're done with Abema TV. Anyway, they have a subatomic weight fight. I don't know what the weight class is actually called. It's 97 pounds. Satoko Shinashi taking on Madoka Ishibashi, a.k.a. Madeline. So Shinashi is 37-3-2. Madeline is 1-4. Let me check out the age difference here because I know Shinashi is getting up there in age. Shinashi is 42. I don't have an age for Madeline. I'm going to go with Shinashi, though. She might be old, but Madeline is not good, whereas Shinashi is used to crushing cans like Madeline. Next up, Pancrase 304. This is Sunday, early Sunday morning. Yeah, I believe it's Sunday. In Japan, we have Yoko Higashi, 3-1, taking on, is it Lazy Sequeira? I don't know, from Brazil, 2-2. Again, I'm going with familiarity there. I'm going to go with Higashi. Monday, Shudo 30th anniversary tour, the Tokyo stop. Yeah, Shudo's 30 years old. It's older than the UFC. We have a catchweight fight. I still have not seen what the weight is set up for this. Yeji Lee, 3-5, taking on Mina Karobi, 12-5. I'm going with Karobi via experience. This fight, I did a little news announcement video on it. 22-year difference or 23-year difference between these two. But I am going with Karobi. And then finally, Wednesday, WXC Warrior Wednesday 4. Now, originally, I was looking at doing a fight companion for this, but for some reason, according to Fight Pass, this show starts at 4 p.m. I will still be at work, so unless that changes, I'm going to have to watch the replay on it. 135 pounds, Kaylee Cutler, 6-6, taking on Kyrgyzstan's Barchanaya Uzgenbaeva, 4-1. I'm going to go with Kaylee Cutler. Now, her record is not that great, but she has been in there with good opponents, quality opponents, whereas Uzgenbaeva's fights, or Barchanaya, yeah, Uzgenbaeva is her last name. Uzgenbaeva, her 4 wins are against fighters that have not won a single fight yet. So, got to go with Cutler on that. I think Uzgenbaeva is being brought over to the U.S. for a reason. I think UFC might have their eye on her, because why else would a very small promotion bring in someone all the way from Kyrgyzstan to fight on a Wednesday? Because it's on Fight Pass. So the UFC might have their eyes on her, but they, might have reached out to WXC and said, "Hey, can you bring her on for one of your Wednesday shows?" Because and if she does good here, maybe they'll bring her on to the Contender Series, and then that might be a step into the UFC. Or she get brought into the UFC directly if she wins. Provided she wins, she has to win. Anyway, this is all just a theory. I don't know. I can't prove that for sure. Anyway, guys, that's it for this week. So, wasn't a whole lot going on news-wise this week. And like I said, there's not a whole lot of fights going on this weekend. Or over the next week. It's just that they're all spread out over the promotions. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's 5 fights spread out over 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, over really 6 days. Or so. I don't know. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Chat was quiet tonight. Otherwise, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to WMMA now, the best, fastest growing women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. And hit that bell for notifications so you know what's going on. Other than that, guys, have a good night.